I'm very pleased to be here, and especially to follow the previous speaker. You gave us such wonderful examples about what is called the householder spirituality, which is so significant among Sikhs and also among the Jewish community. And for me, I've been asked to speak about spirituality of marriage. I feel really very happy to do this, but I can only do it very shortly. And what I must say is, when I did some research for my book on spirituality and looked at the spirituality all through life, from birth through growing up to maturity to getting married, work, aging, dying, and so on, the whole dance of life in relation to spirituality, then I looked for information on the spirituality of marriage, and there is actually very little as such on the spirituality of marriage. There is much more in most religions on the renunciation of marriage and on asceticism, you see. So in a way, it's almost a contradiction. And I'm particularly happy to be back here today because I've not been for many, many years due to so many pressures and jobs and works. But I remember going with Margaret to conferences, and I owe the Unification Church so many contacts and inspirations and so much enrichment, so that I'm really glad to be here, even though I only speak for a few minutes. Now, today there is a lot of talk about the breakdown of marriage and family life, and we all want to have the renewal of family life. And to my surprise, I discovered even already in the 1930s, the Jewish philosopher Martin Buber wrote about the renewal of marriage. I thought, well, that's over 70 years ago, so it's not exactly new. It has happened for quite some time that people have given thought to these questions and that relationships have not always been right. I'm a great supporter of marriage, and I'm perhaps quite a good example because I've been married for over 45 years. And so I feel very strongly about marriage. But at the same time, I would say a note of caution. I feel also very critical. And I feel that the people who often defend the values of marriage are too conservative and perhaps too backward-looking. So what is the renewal of marriage and how to live relationships? Now, for me, I think the most important thing is perhaps, I could say like in interfaith dialogue, marriage is a community of hands, head, and heart. You have to put your hands together to work together, to be really in good contact, but you also have to think about your head, your language, your communication. You have to really speak to each other. You have to be in dialogue with each other, and then you have to have the deep love in your heart. So it's really about these three H's, the head, the hands, the head, and the heart. Because what I think is most basic for marriage relationship is this deep connectedness. I mean, that is our great human endowment, our connectedness with other people and with all of life, and how we are part of the stream of life. We have been born and brought into life by our parents. We can think of our ancestors and how long down the line we come somewhere and how we are handing on life and how this is a whole web of life to which we are continuing to give something. So it's an act of creativity, it's an act of giving, but it's an act that demands a lot of efforts, and it's not always easy. It's not about just this great feeling of love. That sounds much too easy. All the difficulties, I mean, deep love is something different from just feeling nice about a person. You know, that's relatively easy. So it's important to see that love is a project. I mean, marriage is a project, and love is even a project. Marriage is a project, and I think this was also quite evident from what you said about Sikhism. And I felt this really when I was young. I used to discuss this a great deal with my husband. How do you work at it particularly when things don't work out and when it's difficult? It's a project. And if you can really put your mind to the project, and if you can put your commitment and your efforts into it, it can work. And I know many couples who are divorced who say, oh, well, if I had understood what love is really about when I was 20 years younger, I would have had a very different marriage, or my marriage wouldn't have broken up, or if I had been a bit more tolerant, or a bit more open, or a bit more generous. So you have to really see, what does a marriage work? What is the spirituality of marriage? And I think there, for me, really, it's a sharing of body, mind, and soul of your whole being. But that involves many, many different aspects. And I think what is important in the relationship is the openness and the trust, the deep trust. There is a love that envelops everything and is around everything, and that should work. But you have to have basically the expression of this love in trust and in confidence that the other person is not exploiting you, is not violating you, is not suppressing your own ideas. So I have always found that in my years of marriage, the most precious thing is the inner freedom to develop yourself and have space for growth and be recognized and respected. And you see, there are too many marriages where that is not the case. And I speak particularly from a very engaged gender perspective. Many women are downtrodden by their husbands. There's absolutely no doubt about this. And many women are violated and experience domestic violence. There are also some men that experience domestic violence. There are also men that are abused verbally or psychologically. So we have to really look the truth into the face. The landscape is very, very uneven. You can see marriages of all sorts of kinds, because human relations are so complex, so diverse. They can be so subtle, they can be so crude. You see, so you have to see the entire landscape of what is possible within a marriage. But it is important to have an effort to really develop the deepest energy of love. And I would say, at heart, the family is a school of and for love, if it's really lived in a true way. And you have that in Martin Buber, in his famous book, I and Thou, You and You. It's a relationship between the I and the you, and between you and the I. And in that relationship and in that giving of love and caring, at the deepest spiritual level, there is also the recognition and the revelation of that greater you that is God. And you have that in Buber very, very strongly. You see, the presence of the Spirit, the presence of the divine is so extraordinary. And you have in the Christian scriptures, St. Paul writes, nothing can separate us from the love of God. That is this sense, you dwell in love. Wherever you are, you dwell in love. And I think we haven't really taken this in, not even Christian theologians, because, I went around the local park the other day, and there was graffiti on a post in the entrance gate, and it says, "You are loved. Remember always you are loved." And I thought, who has written this? With some big joke, quite crude. You are loved. Remember. And I thought, this is true. How do we dwell in love? How do we know that really ultimately we can trust life? Because life is suffused with spirit. We are suffused with spirit. Every cell of our body is suffused with spirit. You see, there's a wonderful book I've just read, The Biology of Belief, by an American cell biologist who develops this idea, how the cells, not even the cells at our biological basis, can work individually alone. They always work in community. They have to integrate. They have to cooperate, even if they're not conscious of that. And how even these cell communities are affected by our own thoughts, by our own attitudes, and how really our beliefs and our attitudes make a fundamental difference to the way life treats us and we are being treated, you see. And that's this question of openness and of trust, and I think that is very, very important. Now, to talk about love, today I think our culture, our civilization, the whole global humanity is in a profound age of transformation. So many things have changed, are changing, are so complex. Where are we going to go? How we are going to deal with things? And some people are working on awakening the energies of love, to see that we need a fundamental transformation of ourselves and society through the power of love. And that power has to be learned. We can learn it best in the family and with our friends, but that love is only the beginning. Our loves can remain